I have always had a little bit of an activist bent, and certainly when I moved to the Brite Divinity School about 8 years ago, we're a progressive-leaning theological school. Our mantra is scholarship, justice, and practice. And so when I came to Brite, it was about the time that Trayvon Martin was shot, and I have a son who is Trayvon Martin's age, and my son is still living, and I think about him growing and the joy he brings us. And in contexts like this, to think about guns and to even, it's hard for me to say Trayvon Martin's name without crying. I shouldn't have done that. But again, Trayvon and Tamir Rice and Michael Brown, and how that just, it seems to me, instead of the question of why we are talking about guns or passionate about gun activism, it seems to me almost the reverse question is how could we not be interested in this question given how much violence especially has come up even today. I mean, of course, the New Zealand incident is clearly on our minds as well. In terms of the Bible question or how I use the Bible, I thought I would do a show instead of tell. And so what I brought for you, and this is from December 13th, 2017, I wrote this to each of my senators, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, as well as my congressional representative, Kay Granger, and I will take this time. I write today to address the issue of sensible gun control legislation. I am prompted to do so today because this morning in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, I read about the shooting death of a man within blocks of where I work, 35-year-old Jason Bradley, also known and beloved as Ms. Bianca Giselle Davenport Starr, only to turn the page to read about a 35-year-old surgeon in North Richland Hills, a Fort Worth suburb, who shot and killed his two young children, Luke Dawson and Aubrey Dawson, before turning the gun on himself this past Saturday. The dead children killed by their father with a gun to their heads in their home were ages 9 and 5 years old. Neighbors said they heard a, quote, weird yelp type thing in the morning that these shootings occurred. I realize I have no power to convince you to increase dramatically your efforts to prevent Texas citizens of deaths by gunshot, and this is different, of course, between Texas and California, because I am aware of your strong, unwavering loyalty to the NRA, and that could be said of Cruz, Cornyn, and Kay Granger. But I am an ordained United Methodist minister with some theological knowledge and spiritual insight, and the sound of one of these children, the weird yelp before the fatal death, haunts me. Thus, I have decided to draw on my theological education and spiritual insight to at least make the following request. And so here I turn into my biblical scholar mode. When the next massacre by handgun or automatic rifle or semi-automatic rifle occurs in Texas, and there will be another, the question is not whether but when, I would ask that you and your staff refrain from offering your thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims. I ask this for a religious reason. Not even the devil himself could imagine a more demonic cycle and blasphemous cycle of behavior than the following. First, cash the checks from the NRA. Second, refuse to implement sensible gun control legislation, even though the vast majority of American citizens are in favor of such measures. Third, offer thoughts and prayers for the families of the victims after they are shot and killed. Dragging God into this demonic cycle of greed, profit, cynicism, and tragic death, as if God answers the prayers of those who are complicit in this cycle, is an affront to God, to biblical teaching, to basic spiritual decency. It cheapens religious language to do so. It should offend your Christian constituents and all people of faith to hear such offers of prayer. Prayers offered in these circumstances are nothing more than a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. They do nothing to suppress the pitiful yelps of the dying innocent, yelps that do indeed reach to the heavens and do indict in the heavenly courts those who have the power to stop this cycle of violence, but who prefer instead to cash their checks from the NRA. In closing, I repeat my understanding of where things stand. I do not imagine that you have it in your heart to work for the sort of gun legislation that might save substantial numbers of lives and make a truly significant difference, though I welcome learning otherwise. But I ask at least of the recognition of God's holiness that you might refrain from suggesting that you pray to God, asking God to do your cleanup work for you, binding the broken hearts of those you refuse to protect.